Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly believe the world's all about them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, we've got psycho Karens attacking students, trying to steal the spotlight at weddings, people letting their kids set houses on fire. Oh my goodness, it's such a wild one today. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this is about my own wedding that happened a while ago, and how an entitled mom nearly turned it into her personal circus. For some background, my fiancé and I planned our wedding for over a year. We wanted something small yet elegant with close family and friends. My husband's family's pretty down to earth, except for his Aunt Karen, who's known for her over-the-top behavior and entitlement. Everything was going smoothly until the week before the wedding. Aunt Karen called and she demanded we include her 6-year-old daughter as flower girl, as she really wanted to be a part of the wedding party. We already had 2 flower girls picked out, my nieces, who were thrilled about it, so I politely declined, explaining that arrangements were made. Well, Karen didn't take this well. She starts a tirade about how her daughter was being excluded unfairly, and how we were ruining her child's self-esteem, and what's the harm in having one more flower girl. I tried to stay calm, but she was relentless. I had thought that was the end of it, but oh boy was I wrong. On our wedding day, Karen shows up with her daughter, dressed in a full-blown white flower girl dress. Karen then marches up to me and demanded that her daughter be included in the ceremony. I was flabbergasted. My husband and I, along with our wedding planner, tried to reason with her, but she caused such a huge scene. She was saying things like, "How could you be so selfish on your wedding day? You're destroying a little girl's dream. You're making her cry." That's when my usually quiet mother-in-law had enough. She steps in and she told Karen in no uncertain terms that this was our day, not hers, not her daughter's. She then said if Karen couldn't respect our wishes, they would have to leave. At that, Karen was shocked. She tried to argue and she tried to force her daughter to cry even harder to get sympathy. But other family members who were equally fed up with her antics supported my mother-in-law's stance. Realizing she was outnumbered, Karen just left in a huff, with her daughter in tow. Because in her words, if her daughter wasn't allowed to be flower girl, there was no point in being at this wedding. The rest of the wedding went off without a hitch, and everyone had a good time. We heard through the grapevine that Karen complained about us to anybody who would listen. She even made a Facebook post crying about it. But most of the family knew her history, and they took it with a grain of salt. I'm so grateful for my amazing in-laws who stood up for us. You know what? The entitlement of some people never ceases to amaze me, guys. Oh, my daughter can't be flower girl at your wedding? Well, there's no point in being here then. And why am I not surprised, guys? Like, she probably only wanted to be there so everybody attending could see her darling little angel walk down the aisle throwing petals. And seriously, the sad thing is, I bet you she even told her daughter that she was gonna be flower girl and got her all excited for it, assuming that if she showed up in a frilly dress, she'd just be allowed to be flower girl. Oh my goodness. So the company I'm working for hired a new person last month as an entry-level programmer. The guy seemed pretty cool. He just graduated with high grades and he was quite young. My boss had high hopes. And he did start great. All tasks are done in a very short period of time, well optimized, etc. And that's the point when he decided to be an a-hole to us. About 2 weeks after being hired, the guy starts to act like our boss. He would say things like, do this, do that, etc. I wasn't paying him attention since I was already tasked with the things he would order for me to do. But this didn't stop him. The guy nonstop asked everyone to bring him coffee, bring him a sandwich, etc. And if somebody refused, he would threaten to tell the boss that we're being disrespectful to him, which makes absolutely no sense. We complained and complained to our boss numerous times about his entitled behavior, and the boss always said that he would make a note of it and talk to him. Well, this was the day that everything went wrong for him. We were working hard on completing a project when all of a sudden, the guy shouts at me and he says, "Hey, bring me a coffee fast." I tell him I'm busy right now. That's when he has the nerve to say to me, "I didn't ask, I said to bring me a coffee now." I respond, "No, you're not my boss." That's when he says, "Yes, I am, and you will do whatever I say." I tell him, no, not in this world. The boss has talked to you about this before, so please leave me alone, I have to work. He then says, "I'm gonna report you to the boss for disobeying me." I respond, "I'm sorry, you're gonna report me for not getting you coffee? Who do you think the boss will side with?" He tells me, "Of course me. Listen, my dad recommended me to the boss. They know each other." I tell him, "Listen, pal, just because you're recommended by someone to the boss and your dad happens to know him doesn't mean you have any more rights than a regular entry level. And it sure doesn't give you the right to boss us around." He ends with, "We'll see about that." I just ignored him, and he asked a few more people to get him coffee, but they all refused. He then starts yelling that he was disobeyed and will all be fired by the end of the day. He then storms out of the office. Literally 10 minutes later, I get called into the boss's office. My boss explained to me that this kid had reported me for disrespect and swearing at him. I of course denied it all, and I told him that every single person in the office would confirm my story and not his. My boss didn't have a doubt that this kid was telling lies, but he still asked everyone personally. He also checked the office cameras. They all supported my story, as well as the camera clearly showed him yelling and ordering everyone around. And the boss went, "You know what? Okay, if he won't play nice, we'll just fire him." And the thing is, since the kid hasn't passed the probation period, which is 90 days where I am, he's subject to immediate termination with no prior notice, which was nice. The boss calls him into his office and the kid was smiling really hard, as he was expecting me to get fired. That's when my boss tells him, "Hey, I'm sorry, but as of the end of the day, you're not an employee in this company anymore, and your contract will be voided this night." That's when the kid tells my boss, "What? But my dad recommended me here. You two are friends. You can't fire me." Boss just tells him, "Don't yell at me in my office. And just because your dad recommended you doesn't mean you're entitled to anything more than a position. Your dad's a great person, but your behavior is completely unacceptable, and we can't have that at our company." He then tells my boss, "I didn't do anything. I just asked for a coffee, and they refused." Boss tells him, "That's the point. No one's required to bring you coffee, and you just can't order people around and think you're the boss here." He then says, "If you fire me, I will sue you." To which my boss says, "You should stop right there and leave the office immediately. I won't tolerate threats towards me." So long story short, he did leave, but not before throwing a massive tantrum in our office and being escorted out by building security. Again, the entitlement of some people. Like how someone thinks that as a new person, they can talk that way to their colleagues, let alone the big boss of the company, is freaking baffling to me. Hopefully the guy changes his attitude or he'll be job hopping the rest of his life. And I only say that because I knew a few guys like that when I worked in the trades, guys. If you can't play nice with people, you don't last very long at all. And with being in the trades, I've seen grown men getting slapped by others for talking like that. And I'm being dead serious. I've worked with welders, iron workers, and pipe fitters who wouldn't think twice about hitting someone square in the face, and that's pretty scary. So I have a lot of crazy stories to share, but this one's not coming from me. It'll be coming from my uncle, who worked at Walmart in 1978, which proved that Karens are a more ancient species than we know. Who knows when they popped up? So that said, back in 1978, the customers weren't as insanely weird as they were now at your local Walmart. You'd get the occasional mullet man or overworked 9-to-5 employee who hadn't had his morning coffee, but aside from that, his job was straight up boring. Every day, my uncle stocked shelves, and every day, he got one step closer to insanity. One day, however, that all changed for my dear Uncle Rick. A woman walked in, carrying a twig for a boy, who was wiping snot all over the tabloids by the cash registers while staring at everything and nothing at the same time. The woman had this enormous beehive hairdo going on, which was apparently the Karen's hairstyle of choice in the 60s and 70s, as well as a pair of deadly-looking high heels. She kept walking around the entire store, criticizing everything, from the placement of items to the quality of things. According to my uncle, she didn't look very rich, so it would have been an odd sight to see somebody in such shabby clothing turning up their nose at something because of poor quality. My uncle Rick and the 3 other employees that were working their shift with him had been observing her for a while, not sure whether to do something or not. Finally, she decides on a tube of lipstick, a hairbrush, and a packet of Keebler cookies for her blank slate son. She then waddles to the register and she places her items on the counter, while criticizing the lady working the register about her lack of makeup on her face. She got so worked up from the employee not saying anything that she began screaming profanities, saying, "Look at me, bitch, when I'm talking to you. How dare you ignore me?" That's when my Uncle Rick and the rest of the employees immediately asked her to leave, which she did, right after pointing at each one of them and shouting, "You bastard," each time. She then grabbed her son by the arm and shoved him towards the door, all while attempting to take her items with her, which she didn't pay for. That's when one employee began to run after her while my Uncle Rick went to the back to grab the manager. When they both got to the doors, the employee had managed to push her back inside the store, while she was clawing his eyes out with her sharp fingernails, screaming incoherently. When she turned to face the manager, she then lifted her foot, and she drove the sharp, pointy part of her heel right through his shoe and foot. The manager passed out from the pain, and the cops arrive not soon after. Karen was dragged away by the cops, and she ultimately ends up arrested, and the boy's aunt had to come pick him up. Rick's manager had to get stitches for his foot, but he was otherwise fine. Rick found out later that she was most likely on drugs that were found in her car, which is probably why she kept muttering to herself and why she was so aggressive. He also found out that her name was actually Karen, so that's cool. He quit a week after that incident, and he's currently a marketing and communications professor at the University of California. So yeah, that's the story. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for reading. So yeah, the moral of the story is don't do drugs. Although I don't think I'd blame drugs that much for her behavior, because a Karen's gonna Karen, right? That said though, oh my goodness, the thought of a heel going through a shoe into a foot, I feel so bad for that manager who had no idea what he was walking to when he approached her. Just like the student in this next story, guys. So this encounter with a wild beast wasn't mine, but it's my mom's. My mom's a teacher at the school. She didn't interact with this Karen, but she did witness it. The kid this happened to is about 12 to 13 years old in the story, and so is Karen's son. That said, on to the story. So apparently during arts and crafts class, this one kid got hot glue on Karen's son's clothes. Because he's nothing like his mom, he said it was okay, and he kept going on with his day. At the end of the day, Karen comes to pick her son up at the front gate of the school, and that's when her kid breaks the news to her. At that, Karen turns bright red, and she storms out of the car, screaming, "I demand to know where this kid is." She goes into the hangout area, and unfortunately for the boy, he was just playing a card game with his classmates while waiting for the bus. Karen stomps over to him, and the following conversation went like this. She screams at him saying, "You idiot! How dare you get hot glue on my son's clothes?" She then proceeds to slap the kid hard. And then she says, "You're gonna pay for his clothes, and you deserve the same to happen to you to learn a lesson." At this point, the kid's dumbfounded, looking at Karen, and my mom was about to intervene, but this one woman comes up first. She says, "Excuse me, ma'am, but you can't storm in here like this, and you can't slap a student." Karen then puts her finger in the woman's face and says, "Don't you dare talk to me like that. My son's clothes are damn expensive. The kid got what he deserved." At this point, more kids came around. and all of them were looking at Karen like they were ready to snap at any second and attack her. So she just leaves to go back to her car. The kids' parents were called and they went to the police. Not sure what happened after that. I can only hope that woman was arrested and she cried when cops came for her, because how dare you slap a 12-year-old, especially over something like that. And here's a thought: if you get mad at your child's expensive clothes getting ruined at school, maybe don't buy such expensive clothes for them, right? But yeah, groups of teens are absolutely terrifying, and she's lucky they let her off that easy. Like, I can only imagine the headlines. Middle-aged woman gets the crap smacked out of her by an angry mob of 12-year-olds. Wouldn't that be something? So this story may need some background. This took place during Thanksgiving a few years back. A lot of people had shown up. Many relatives, their kids. It was well over 50 people in a house. In general, everyone was having a good time. There was this one aunt that no one liked. If you stood next to her, you could probably see entitlement dripping off of her. No one had invited her to any family occasions since she threw a tantrum because she wasn't included in my late grandpa's will. Anyways, dinner's been served and everyone's eating and having fun. After about 20 minutes, we hear screams. My cousin and I jump up and we rush to the kitchen, the origin of the screams. There's kids running out of there left, right, and center. The scene in there is chaos. There were sticks on the floor and marshmallows were everywhere. There was also a towel that was completely on fire, just sitting on the counter. And just like that, the fire alarm goes off. Dad rushes in and he screams, "Stand back." And with the fire extinguisher, he most likely saved our house. So after rounding up about 7 kids that were in the kitchen, we got to cracking, figuring out what happened, although it's pretty clear. My one cousin said we were all eating when Jimmy, Karen's son, said that we should roast marshmallows over the stove. So we all went outside and gathered sticks. Jimmy then turned on the gas stove and started to light his stick. But it started to burn really fast, so he dropped it on the stove, and the whole thing caught on fire. And that's when Jimmy grabbed a towel to try to smother the flames, which also caught on fire. All the kids then screamed, which brought everyone here. Everyone now looks at Jimmy, and Grandma says, "Do you have anything to say about what you've done?" That's when Karen chimes in and says, "What's wrong? He was just having fun. Plus, nothing serious happened." Grandma says, "Nothing serious happened. Your child nearly burned your sister's house to the ground. The counter is black from the fire." That's when Karen says, "Exactly, nearly. That doesn't mean it did." Grandma then says, "Are you going to apologize or not?" Karen says, "Apologize for what? He's a kid." Kids do stuff like this. My grandma then proceeded to kick her out with a few swear words for the road. Honestly, she and her kid ruined the whole Thanksgiving dinner. After we had finished with the whole ordeal, the food was cold. Quite a lot of family members then proceeded to cut her out of their lives. The last I heard of her was in March this year, when she somehow found my social media account and she came to beg me to ask my mom to give her some money. I promptly proceeded to block her. Good call on that, and honestly, with that type of no-care attitude, it's only time before her child actually sets a home on fire by doing something like that. Oh, he only nearly set your home on fire. It's no big deal. Kids do it all the time. And guys, this person shares a story about the time their entitled cousin did set a forest ablaze, and it's wild. When I was 9 years old, my older cousin, 14, stayed with me and my family for a couple of weeks. My cousin was an entitled troublemaker, and her parents had hoped that sending her to our family would help keep her out of trouble for a little while. One day, while she was over, I asked if we could go to our local forest area and make a fire to roast marshmallows. When we got down there, we made a little makeshift campfire out of newspaper and sticks, all on top of a rock. Eventually, my curiosity got the better of me, and I'd start chucking different things into the fire. Leaves, sticks, pine cones, anything I could find in the area we were in. And that's when my cousin asked if I wanted to see what it would look like if she set a leaf on a tree on fire. My cousin then got her lighter and she lit a small leaf on a nearby tree. I stare at the reaction in awe, and that's when my cousin sets a group of leaves on fire. She just laughed as we watched the fire slowly engulf the branch. Once the fire burnt itself out, she starts saying things like, "Hey, we should set fire to the bushes and branches." I told her maybe that's not a good idea, but she just told me it would be okay and that her mom lets her do it all the time. That's when we realized that the fire wasn't dying out. In fact, it was spreading. My cousin starts to freak out as she realized the fire wasn't stopping. The summer heat wave had made everything so dry that it was catching fire extremely quickly. She grabbed my hand and we ran to the dirt road that was on the outskirts to the forest. But instead of calling emergency crews, we just stood there, watching it as it spread and spread and spread. We ran back home. My cousin almost called multiple times, but I kept telling her I didn't want to get in trouble, so she never did. Eventually, the fire spread so much that the fire department had trouble controlling it, and they had to order an evacuation of a nearby village. It was said to be the biggest fire the town's ever seen in 150 years. No one was hurt, but it did take 10 hours to get under control. And the thing is, it wouldn't have been as bad if we had called 999 when we first lost control. I still feel terrible about it, and it's been decades. So I'm a 31-year-old male, and recently, my cousin, who's 21 years old, also male, moved in with me after he got kicked out of his college dorm and had no job to pay for rent. My parents told me that I needed to step up and help because I own a house, live alone with my 2 golden retrievers and 2 birds that I've had since last year. My cousin would make fun of me whenever I would call my pet's family, and he thinks I'm crazy. The guy's got a bad sense of humor and he thinks he's funny. He calls me funny nicknames like Robot, Terminator, Optimus Prime, and others because I wear a prosthetic leg that I've gotten after I had an infection 2 years ago. I've been patient with him, causing a mess and not even doing his own laundry, and it's been 3 months, and it's too much already. That said, recently, he started doing pranks and using personal things in his pranks, like my clothes, my phone, stuff from the kitchen, etc. I usually take off my prosthesis before going to bed, and since I work all day, I go to bed early. Unlike him, he stays up until 3 to 4 a.m. One day, he decides to do a prank and he hid my leg somewhere. I saw that my leg was gone in the morning and I had enough of his BS, so I asked him where he took it. He joked and he said it was inside the fridge, and I was livid. I then start screaming at him to stop it and tell me where my leg was before I kick him out. He realized I was being serious and he told me it's in the attic. I of course let him go get it. When he brought it to me, he looked very worried and he starts apologizing. And that's when I saw the socket had cracks and the adjustment period and pylon were damaged. He told me he hid it under an old TV and he didn't think it was this fragile. It was there overnight, so the damage has already been done. I lost my lid and I yelled at him while all he did was apologizing, saying it was nothing but a harmless prank, which made it worse. That's when I told him to leave and I called my aunt to tell her about what her son did and that she needs to pay for damages. Her reaction was shocking. She then said it was my fault because I know how her son is, and I decided to take him in anyways, and that she won't take any responsibility for his actions. That's when I told her that I would seriously sue because I'm broke, I have no money to pay for a new prosthesis, and my crutches are unbearable. I was so angry that I kept lashing out at everyone, especially my mom and dad, who argued with me and said that I can't sue family because that's not right. And this is my cousin and he meant no harm. I told them that he created this situation and he needs to fix it. They then called me awful. I told them to stay out of it, but they're telling me to not cause an issue, and suing my cousin will make them look bad to everyone. So now, I'm stuck here with crutches, feeling awful. They all tried to shut me up while they tried to raise money for me, and my cousin just gets away with it. So am I the a-hole for wanting to sue my cousin? You know, it is always such a headache when dealing with family when it comes to stuff like this. And I'm totally on OP's side when they say they want to sue the cousin for the money to get a new prosthetic. Like, why should OP have to hobble around on crutches and have to wait for who knows how long for the parents to get the funding together for a new leg? That's if they can get the money together. And don't even get me started on how a-hole-ish it sounds when someone tells you to not do something to save them from embarrassment. Like, OP's parents can pound sand too if all they care about is what others think of them if OP does go through with the lawsuit. Support your damn son, people. OP's cousin is such an a-hole in this one, and the guy needs to learn a lesson, and he needs to learn that actions do have consequences. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this. One of the top comments say, not the a-hole. Screw what they're saying. He's 21 years old, not 12. He's never going to learn if he's not forced to take responsibility. You need to go to the cops and have him charged with destruction of property, and then file civil charges for the replacement cost. Never let anyone tell you that family means letting them get away with crap like this. Guys, let me know your thoughts. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's another r/entitled people, where Karens are going absolutely psycho. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.